Welcome again, everyone, to week 5 of the virtual symposium, the Kamoinge workshop, Collaboration, Community, and Photography. This week, we will be hearing from the artist Buford Smith and catalog essayist Bill Gaskins about the creation of Buford's work and the Black Photographers Annual, something that we touched on earlier in our symposium. First, though, we will hear a conversation between two VMFA staff members who worked to digitize and archive the Lewis H. Draper archive. So I'll introduce them now and turn it over to them. Courtney Takeizi is the archivist at VMFA, where she has been employed in different library and archive roles since 2003. She is responsible for managing all of the permanent records at VMFA, including institutional records, artist and subject files, museum publications, and special collections related to the museum and the history of art in Virginia. She oversaw the digitization of the Draper archive, which was funded by a grant by the National Endowment for the Humanities. Tonight, Courtney is joined by Sandra Sellers, who is an assistant photographer with the Virginia Museum of Fine Arts and the Lewis Draper archive photographer. Sellers is an award-winning photojournalist with the Richmond Free Press, a Black-owned and operated newspaper earning Best in Show, Best News, Best Spot News, Best Pictorial, Best Photo Illustration, and Best Photo Essay honors in state and national newspaper and photography competitions. Please join me in welcoming Courtney and Sandra.
Hi, everyone. Thank you to Izzy and Sarah for organizing this wonderful symposium series and for inviting us here tonight. My name, as she said, is Courtney Takeizi. I'm the archivist at VMFA, and tonight I'm excited to talk about how we built the Lewis H. Draper Archive portal online and how we transformed an extremely large physical archive into a highly accessible digital resource. And as she mentioned, I will be followed by my incredible colleague, Sandra Sellers, the assistant photographer, who's going to talk about the process of how she digitized the archive. And so before, I'd like to start by taking a moment to recognize and honor the critical role that Nell Draper Winston, Lou Draper's sister, played in bringing the archive to VMFA. It was during her stewardship of the collection that it was donated to VMFA with the promise that we would digitize it, preserve it, create an exhibition, and write a scholarly catalog, which we did to honor his legacy. So this was always Nell's vision. So as Izzy mentioned, in 2017, in order to meet those goals, we were awarded a generous grant from the National Endowment for the Humanities that funded our work to digitize, preserve, and disseminate the archive over a period of about 2.5 years. You can see here all the various people it took, and part of my goal tonight is to explain why it took that long and how we needed a team of people from different expertise levels to do that work, to interpret, digitize, photograph, and catalog that material. We had people from many different areas of the museum, mostly library and archives, photography, and curatorial, that were working on this project together. So the image you see here on the left is a painting of Lou in his office by Mel Leipzig, his colleague, and it is at Mercer County Community College in New Jersey, where he taught photography for 20 years. And when he died, this was how his archive and his papers were found. It took his colleague and friend, Gary Soretsky, who was also an archivist and who I think is on the call tonight, I hope so. It took him 2 years to organize this material into some sort of usable state. What you see now on the right is just a very small portion of the collection in our archive today. And it took us an additional 2 years to get to that point. And the reason it took so long is Gary did a great job and organized everything by type of material. So all of the photographs, the prints were listed together, all of the slides were listed together, all of the negatives were listed together. And while we do physically house like materials in the same boxes, you can see different size boxes for different size prints and things, we determined that there was a better way that we could organize it intellectually for such a large photographic archive. So what we did is my archives technician, Margot Lentz-Mayer, and I spent several weeks trying to come up with an organizational scheme that we thought was flexible enough for such a large archive. And the conclusion that we came to that we wanted to try to work with was that the photo shoot was the main organizing principle that we wanted to focus on for a photography archive. And then within each base photo shoot number, which is that long part you can see there, you could have what we called a C number, which was a context sheet, a P number, which was a print, there's a C, there's a P, an S number, which is a slide, and then a T number, which was a negative. And so when I search for Malcolm X in our database, this is what comes up. All of the different types of media are all connected together by that same base photo shoot number. We were pretty proud with what we had come up with, but we were even happier when we had scholars come to visit afterwards and said that they thought this was a really interesting and great way to arrange this material intellectually. So normally, archival cataloging takes place at the file level or the folder level because there can be such a huge amount of material in an archive. But when you're digitizing, you need to describe something at the item level and you need to number it at the item level. So you can see how much data we were working with over the course of 2.5 years. It's a lot. And while that seems overwhelming and while that takes a lot of time and staff time especially, there's great things that can come from that large amount of data, which is what we'll talk about next. So one of the things that we do with data and how we create context is something called data normalization, and we applied controlled vocabularies, which I know is a lot of big words, but in plain English, what that really means is that we worked really hard to make sure that through data that we knew that this portrait of Ray Francis by Anthony Barboza is the same person in this image taken by Draper called James Ray Francis, and is the same person in these this contact sheet of more Draper images, but of Uncle Ray Francis. So we wanted to make sure behind the scenes, the data tells us that if someone's looking for images of Ray Francis, that these are all the same person. The other thing we did is we drew connections directly to the artworks in our collection. So in this case, we added metadata that works, again, in the background that you don't see, that when someone finds this image of the soccer game from Senegal, one of Draper's images, they will immediately be offered the opportunity to explore archival material that is directly related to that image. So in that case, you'll see a test print, looks like there's a contact sheet or a negative, and then a catalog that features that photograph. Talking about connections, we are allowed to make much deeper connections with the artworks at VMFA. For example, the young men that Draper photographed while he was mentoring them through the Bronx Youth in Action program, we were able to find their names. A lot of them had not been known. And so, for instance, this young man, he was previously titled Untitled Plaid Youth. He now has been reunited with his name, thankfully, which is Ace Williams. And that happened in a lot of instances. Another thing we were able to do is, this is a very, very well-known image, these are the negatives from the very well-known image of Malcolm X that Draper took. And once they were digitized, we were able to see that there is a newspaper that he's holding. And because Sandra took these really high-res master images, we were able to blow them up and realize that what we could read that cover, which says we must have justice, and that dated the material to 1963 when it had been dated for years and years to 1964. We're also able to make connections across archival collections. So in this case, the very first page of the Kamoinge workshop meeting minutes from the 1960s, early 1960s, this was from Lou Draper's archive, and this was the only page we had And then when Sarah and I were on a research trip to visit Buford, who you will get to hear later, I'm so excited, we realized that was the actual rest of Draper's notebook that he had in his collection. And so Buford graciously donated to the museum and allowed us to digitize it. So now online, these missing pieces of a whole are now reunited digitally once again, which is amazing. So what does the archive actually look like online? This will just show you there's actually about 6,300 items online, but they're all organized in categories that you can see. And that is a great way for folks to browse various areas of interest. And then you can see once you find a certain section, you can delve further and look at actual items. Any of the related data there at the bottom, additional images. In this case, there's a picture of the camera as well as the camera case. You can zoom in, see different details, and zoom back out. And it's all in this dedicated portal that anyone could find and explore. In addition, you can also do keyword searches. You can also search by media type. In this case, I was searching for a photo shoot of Kamoinge member Al Fanar. And so you can see I put in that long base photo shoot number that we talked about. And in this case, 9 different things came up, including slides, prints, and negatives. So that's that system in action there. And lastly, for user experience, we decided that what you see on the left is the negative strips in their original form, but that users would really prefer to view a positive of those negative strips. So Sandra created, I don't know how many thousands of digital positive, well, contact sheets, basically digital contact sheets for the user to view. So both of these are available on the website, but we privileged the positive version because we knew that that's a lot easier on the human eye for folks to use. So thank you for letting me talk about sort of the back end workings of how we use data to make connections and draw context. And I'm excited for you all to hear about Sandra's process, because it is not an understatement to say that this would not have ever been possible without all the amazing work that she did.
Thank you. So I am Sandra Sullers, and I am the photographer who had the opportunity to photograph the Draper archive. And so what I'm going to do is talk to you about my process in doing so, but keep in mind it's my process, so someone else may do things a little bit differently. So I didn't have an opportunity to meet Louis Draper, but I was familiar with his work. As a matter of fact, this particular image of Fannie Lou Hamer that was in Essence magazine was something that was in a collage of images on my wall when I was growing up. So I knew his work, and I knew he was a Black photographer from Richmond, but I never had the opportunity to meet him. But oddly enough, based on what I found in the archive, he attended a color workshop at VCU the same years that I was there as a grad student, but never got a chance to meet him. So when I got the opportunity to actually work on this archive, I was ecstatic. So the process of digitization is just taking something that is in an analog physical form and kind of translating it to a digital form. All of these items that you see, the letter, the greeting card, the car keys, they were all physical items found in the archive. These are some of the tools that I use to photograph the archive. We use medium format cameras. Well, I use medium format cameras, copy stands, lighting, book scanners for the books and magazines, light meters to make sure the lighting was correct, color checkers for the proper white balance, and everything was shot tethered. So this graph on the screen just is an indication of how big a medium format sensor is compared to like a crop sensor or a full frame sensor. And basically the medium format, it's bigger, which allows the manufacturer to put more photo sites on it, which will render a higher resolution, high definition type image. The image on the left is the actual studio that I worked in. No one worked in there but me. It was quiet. There's actually 2 tables, storage space, and some place for me to sit in that room. The photographic material and documents were all shot in that room. Everything was shot in that room except the slides and negatives, which were shot in the downstairs studio, which on a copy stand with a light box, which is what you're seeing on the right. The light box was actually underneath. This cradle style book scanner was used to photograph books, some magazines, and notebooks, because Louis Draper had a lot of notebooks from college when he was a student, and a lot of the teaching materials he had in notebooks. One of the reasons why this particular apparatus is important, because it is designated just for books, because you can adjust it for the thickness of a book spine. And the actual bed of the scanner can be adjusted. It can even lie flat. But the reason for the cradle in that V shape is because there's 2 cameras, one on either side of the scanner, and each camera takes a picture of the opposite page, which is good if you're using any kind of page turning software. Now this image is actually from Ming Smith's book, well, one of her books. I think it's called A Ming Breakfast, Grits and Scrambled Moments. And she actually gifted me with this during one of the interviews. This particular image I chose to illustrate the use of a light meter, a flash meter. When I was shooting the archive, I would use the flash meter to make sure that I had even light on whatever the surface was that I was shooting on. And basically I would meter north, south, east, and west on the copy stand, and I'd meter the middle. And the object was to make sure that 11.4, if you can see it on the meter, make sure that I got that same reading across the board of the surface area. And that way I knew that the lighting was even. Also, there were times when I would use a flash meter to indicate what aperture I would shoot, because if you take a reading with the meter, and as you can see that 11 pops up, which is actually the f-stop or the aperture, and all I had to do was tell the meter what my shutter speed and my ISO was, take a reading, and the f-stop would pop up. Now, I that 11.4 is what I actually shot the cover of the book with, and that's the image that you see on the right. Might be a little dark, but you know, you can tweak things to make it work. I also used color checkers and targets to get the proper white balance for each item. All of the photographic materials and objects, I used the color bar to the left, and all of the transparencies, I used the transparent targets that are to the right. And basically what these checkers do is they allow you to get the proper color or black and white rendition in your images. Everything that I shot was tethered, and that just means that the camera was directly connected to the computer. And whenever image is captured, it's going to show up on your screen, on your monitor. And this is good because the surface is big. And because there's a big surface, it's easier to see what's in focus and what's not in focus. And the entire process of doing this archive is manual. I didn't do anything automatically, and I didn't use an automatic mode for anything, I should say, not even the focus. I manually focused everything. So shooting tethered made that a bit easier because I could see a larger version of the image. Now, during the course of me shooting the archive, there was so much of it that I had to just set some daily goals for myself. And usually what I would do is set a goal, and I wouldn't stop until I completed that goal for that day. This is actually a time lapse of me in that room working, and it didn't go as fast as that, but it went pretty quickly, and I think it is because I set goals for myself. So one of the things that I really enjoyed about shooting this archive was getting a chance to see Louis Draper's perspective and the process of how he did things. And if you come from a film background, usually what you're seeing here is what actually happens. The photographer takes a photograph, he develops the film, he makes a contact sheet, makes test prints, and he produces the final product. In this particular part of the process, he's made the contact sheet. This is actually one of his contact sheets. And he's gone through with a green pen and he's cropped it in a way that's an indication of what what he wants the final product to be. The image to the right is actually an indication of which set of negatives this whole photo shoot came from. Based on what I saw in the archives, these images, he shot a lot of photographs on this day of Langston Hughes, and this is the 3 strips that he wanted to work from. This negative and digitally created contact sheet were a part of a photo shoot that he did with an author, Dewey Clark. And again, on this particular day, he shot a lot of rolls of film. And I just know from the archive that either he or the two of them settled on this particular set of negatives. This frame 35A is a frame that they decided to work with, and I only know that because of the archive. The close up to the left is the negative, and the close up on the right is the positive image of that negative. These two images, first of all, he printed a lot of photographs of this particular image. I settled on these two for this presentation because they're fairly large, and I think you can get a sense of the differences between the two images. On the left, the photograph is a little softer. There's not as much contrast, and it's cropped a bit tighter than the image on the right. The image on the right is a little darker. It looks like he must have burned the right sleeve. Well, the left is her left sleeve, but we're looking at it from the right. It looks like he's darkened the skin a bit. Now, if you go to the next slide, you see this is the final image that they agreed upon, and this particular image looks more like that image on the left. It's a bit lighter. Now, this book is available on Amazon if you want to buy it. But I think she's the author of 2 books, I believe. And this is a Draper team. That's Nell Draper to the left, Dr. Sarah Eckhart, Soraya Cochran, my buddy Margot, my buddy Courtney, and that's Sandra Sellers on the right.
We'll see if they come back. Thank you, everyone, for listening to us.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. This was wonderful. And I just have to say it has been an utter privilege to be a part of the team with all of you. And I can't emphasize how much teamwork was involved and how much constant, just the privilege of the insights that everybody had to offer, and how much we learned in such a very condensed timeline. We already had a question in the Q&A asking, saying, Sandra, you set yourself daily goals, but what was the ultimate VMFA goal? And the ultimate deadline was that we knew that this whole thing was going live in January when the exhibition went live. And so there was definitely a final goal, and you all made that goal. So thank you, thank you. This has been a tremendous team effort. And with this slide here on the end, I also wanted to point to all of the Kamoinge artists who are part of that effort, answering questions for us all the time. And Buford Smith, along
I'm here now.
Oh, you're here, along with
Hope I didn't miss anything.
Tony, no.
Can you believe that?
We had
it
a
was
little
there all the time. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
We had a little trouble getting Buford on Zoom, but we've got you now. And so I just wanted to point out with this slide, just to point to the contributions, Buford, that you made. So this is an example of Kamoinge artists working together, using the title of the exhibition, but it's a phrase, we named it because it's a phrase you all use all the time, working together to really complete the archive and the story. And so we had this exhibition announcement from Lou's, from Draper's archive, and Buford, you gifted us the photo that you had in your collection to go with it. And so these are just some of the beautiful moments that came along the way. So with that, I am going to introduce Buford Smith and Bill Gaskins, who are going to have a conversation about Buford Smith's work, as well as the Black Photographers Annual. And again, this has been a long conversation with Buford. You have been so incredibly generous. When Courtney and I called you about the Black Photographers Annual, which we knew about through Lou Draper's archive, you were so enthusiastic and excited about the idea of digitizing it and making it available. And so I want to start with that thank you. And now I'm going to read the formal introductions for Buford and for Bill. Buford Smith was the founder and chief photo editor of the Black Photographers Annual and is president emeritus of Kamoinge. His photographs were included in The Soul of a Nation, and in 2017, Smith was the first recipient of the Culture of Legacy Award given by the Griffin Photography Museum. His photographs have been featured in Timeless, Harper's, PDN, MoMA Publications, the New York Public Library Photography Collection, and Angela Davis Seize the Time, as well as the video Miles Davis, Birth of the Cool. When Louis Draper introduced Buford Smith in their Artist and Influence interview in 1999, he said, "It is my distinguished pleasure to interview one of the finest photographers of our generation, Buford Smith." So that is Louis Draper's introduction of Buford, as I now introduce Bill Gaskins, who tonight has the privilege of interviewing Buford Smith. Bill Gaskins is the director of the Photographic and Electronic Media Masters of Fine Arts program at Maryland Institute College of Art. As an artist, teacher, scholar, and essayist, his artwork, teaching, writing, lectures, and workshops examine race and visual representation, photography and the portrait, the history of photography, contemporary art, and the politics of visual culture, media literacy, the evolution of university art education, and the artist as citizen. He is a contributor to the Working Together catalog, and I want to say that in addition to his essay on the Black Photographers Annual, Bill, you have been such a tremendous cheerleader. Your words of encouragement have just been so important for this project, and I want to thank you for the role you've played throughout, really, in just always coming back to the overall importance of this project. And I'm just very grateful for all of the encouragement you've offered. Thank you. And with that, I am going to turn it over to you and to Buford.
Thank you so much. Can everybody hear me? Am I good? So I want to thank you, Sarah, along with Izzy Fuqua, Shariah Cochran, and Nell Draper Winston, along with Gary Soreski. All of these people are why we're here this evening. All of these people are why that exhibition has recovered. The contribution of these men and women to visual culture nationally as well as internationally, I think is important to appreciate the audacity of this effort, not only in this contemporary moment, but the audacity of that effort in the 1960s, when these people came together to identify themselves as part of the American story relative to post-war photography. So I have a few words I want to begin with before we begin our conversation. And here we go.
There's no photograph of me on the screen.
In 1941, I want you to consider something. This is Buford Smith's birth year. And in 1941, A. Philip Randolph, who was the president of the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters, and Bayard Rustin, a noted civil rights strategist and organizer, were planning the first March on Washington to bring attention to racial segregation in the armed forces, as well as racial segregation in the defense industry during World War II. Now, racial segregation then and now is reflecting, in my view, a question that comes up probably as late as a minute ago. Are Black people part of the human story? The most common answer to that question is no, whether it be personally or in public policy. And photographs made through the ink of mass media consistently portray Black inferiority and inhumanity. Now, Buford Smith's work shows us what humanity looks like through the eyes of one Black man, talking about the world that he's in and that he's been in. He has been self-taught. He has a bold and nuanced vision that has desegregated American photography and visual culture globally since 1963.
Evelyn?
Keep in mind that only a relative handful of curators, critics, and individuals were considering photography as an art form during that time. Then 10 years later, 1973, something happened that expanded the form and the content of post-war American photography, the Black Photographers Annual. The Reporter Objectif Paris called it a small revolution in the artistic world. Buford Smith was the center of a team that brought that about. He, as a member of Kamoinge, understood photography as an art and a transcendent practice in the hands of Black people. The annual was a groundbreaking anthology of photographs by Black photographers who made photographs of Black people who were not athletes, entertainers, or criminals. With Joe Crawford, who we'll learn more about, in the role of patron and saint, journalist Joe Walker in the role of publicist. The two men supported the vision of Buford Smith along with the Kamoinge members in Smith's role as organizer, editor of a book that changed my life and the lives of many other people. I saw Black people in ways that I had not seen before in photographs through the annual. I too came to see photography as an art form for the first time through this small and powerful book. And it was a book that introduced me to Lou Draper, Ray Gibson, Albert Fernard, Dorothy Gloucester, Ming Smith, Roy De Carava, and subsequently introduced world to Marilyn Nance, Daoud Bey. Carrie Mae Weems centers this book as a very, very important anchor for her path as a photographer. And I would not have a life in photography or be at this event this evening if it was not for the Black Photographers Annual. So I'm a legacy of that small revolution. And I'd like to say somewhere in this room, Zoom room, Joe Crawford is whispering to Buford Smith, the man who calls himself the last man standing. Well done, well done, my good friend. Proud of you, man. And so, it's my pleasure to start the conversation with the ever-evolving Buford Smith. So, Mr. Smith, how are you?
So Bill, apologies. We are just working through some technical difficulties. Bear with me.
Okay, so should I just continue?
That would be great.
Okay, good. So this is a self-portrait of Mr. Smith. And one of the things that's important to keep in mind is that he represents not only his own agency and intrepid intellect and spirit as a photographer and as a thought leader through photography. He's part of the Kamoinge workshop. And one of the things that he was about was understanding that there were, like his members, images that needed to be made to humanize the representation of Black people in the world. And there were a number of members who, who were in it that the exhibition brings out, and you should take a moment to go to the website to learn more about the Black Photographers Annual. One of the most important things that has happened is to have public access to these really, really landmark images, and the enterprise that is the Black Photographers Annual, and the timelessness of those images is really revealed in the current exhibition. Louis Draper, Buford credits significantly to expanding his view around the possibilities of photographs. And this is Buford Smith's portrait of Lou Draper with his Leica. And something happened along the way where Buford decides to create an independent publication. Bear in mind that there were numerous photography journals and publications during the 1960s and heading into the 70s that rendered most Black photographers invisible. This was also taking place during the time of the Black arts movement, where cultural efforts to bring Black people into the human family through painting, drawing, cinema, poetry, fiction and nonfiction writing, and yes, photography. And so Buford was encouraged to go down a path to publish his own work. I think in part to the absence of the representations of Black people in the public sphere, especially in publishing. Hold on, is that Buford coming in? So he creates this book called Photographic Images. There was a printer in Harlem.
I keep doing that. It says unmute. It says mute. So what should I do? Press mute?
Hold on.
There, Buford.
Yes, I did that before.
Buford, we can hear you great, so I don't think you need to press anything.
Oh, okay. Let me go into the
If
office
you
now.
just
See, I'm gonna.
speak exactly as you are.
Hold on.
Oh. Is he good?
Hello, Sarah. The office computer is unmuted.
So we'll wait till Buford gets with us. But I'll continue by saying that.
Okay, now I can hear. What should I do now? Okay, let me put the phone down. Hello, Bill. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you. Yes.
Oh, great. Thank you. And thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good.
Thank you again, Sarah.
All right. Can you see the show?
Yes, I see on screen is photographic images.
Yes, sir. All right. So here's where I'd like you to pick up. I want you to tell the story of what motivated you to produce this independent publication and when you did it and why.
So, go ahead. Am I getting feedback here? Bill, can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
Oh, okay, so I'm getting feedback. But anyway, I'll just keep talking.
Okay, thank you.
Well, this started when I was a member of Kamoinge I wanted to do a photographic book of my images. The whole what? This is, I'm sorry, this technology, so much stuff is coming on screen that's throwing me off. This is, hope this doesn't end up being a disaster with me. But anyway, I was an offset printer during this time. This is 1971, 69, somewhere along there.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to make a book of my own images. So I got some photographs together, and a friend of mine, John Dahl, he was also a printer. He said, Buford, I tell you what, I'll print you a booklet for you. So John Dahl did print the booklet, thanks to him. And in the opening page, I mentioned Jimmy Productions, Jimmy Manis, to give Jimmy Manis company a little publicity. And that's how this book came about. I think John
Jimmy
Dahl,
Manis, one of the members.
Yes, I'm sorry, thank you. One of the members of Kamoinge. John Dahl printed about 100 copies, and I just gave them out to people.
And so what was the response to this book, Buford?
Oh, everybody was very surprised and thankful. Matter of fact, about a year ago, a friend of mine, a great photographer, Anho Franco came by the house for lunch, and we were talking. And he said when he went to the hospital, he told his wife, when she was packing up, overnight bag, etc. He said, get the photographic images by Buford Smith. I was shocked. He had a copy of that, which was published in, 71? Mm-hmm. And it almost brought me to tears. I had to leave the room. Someone respected that book so much for them to take it to the hospital with me.
Well, that had to be a powerful moment for you.
It most certainly was.
So talk about this sketch of yours and its connection to the Black Photographers Annual.
Thank you. That was the sketch of the book. I always do sketches of things. I'm in heart a frustrated art director, so I just made a little quick draft of that. And so that's all it was to that. But maybe you could turn the page. No, okay. We'll leave that at that.
Okay. So this
and
was
I did the layout of the book, and I chose the photographs. And I noticed that the inside cover, I used a black page. That's the trend now, a black page. It wasn't that I wanted the page to be black. That was the only paper that my friend Frank Sawyer had in his print shop. So I chose that to be part of the binding of the book.
So to be clear, you proposed doing a portfolio first.
I'm sorry.
You proposed to do a portfolio of the members of the Kamoinge before the Black Photographers Annual, correct?
Yes. Well,
okay.
This came after the other book. I approached this is Kamoinge here. I approached the members of Kamoinge, and we figured out that they would have to contribute, I think, $10 or $15 per member. But some of the members came up short, so the book was never published. So what happened was, I kept their photographs. I hope a lot of them are not listening now. So that's how I have so many photographs. They forgot about it. So I put together the Black Photographers Annual. And Jimmy was always good to solicit money, whatever the phrase is. I'm not good to ask people for money. So we got
Jimmy
together.
Manis.
Yeah, Jimmy Manis, thank you. And a friend of mine, Frank Sawyer, he said, well, I know someone who could give you guys the money to publish the book. And so we met with this person. He was a local hustler in Harlem. So we met with him. He said, I can give you guys $10,000, but you would have to do a porno movie for us. So we passed on that. So the book was put aside. And Jimmy went to Guyana, and I put the book on the side. Then Joe Crawford approached me and said, Buford, if I came up with the money, are you willing to do the books? I said, yeah, of course, Joe. So I gave him a lot of information concerning the annual. Gave him photographs.
You're fading out just a little, Buford. Could you get a little closer to your mic?
Oh, I know what. Can you hear me now?
A little better. But okay, so Jimmy Manis gets the money.
No.
There were strings attached.
Guyana, and he left it in charge of all of his photographs. And he think it went
Okay.
down. In fact, some of them were published in Black Creation.
Okay.
Getting back to Joe Crawford, he got the money within like a year or 2 years, and that's how the annual was done. Without Joe Crawford, there would have never been a Black photography annual.
So one of the things that was important was the level of collaboration that you talked about between you, Joe Crawford, Joe Walker, as well as other points of distribution. I mean, this is an example of one of the mailers for it that comes, as well as this really, really brilliant, I thought, agreement you made with people who wanted to have advertising, specifically camera manufacturers, that you would want them to be in the book, but they could not have any logos. I thought that was a really, really brilliant choice. And this photograph by Anthony Barboza, I don't care how many times I look at it, it still feels like the first time I saw it at the end of the first annual. This is, of course.
Before you go any further, Bill, I hate to interrupt you. Let me get back to the,
Go right ahead.
The ads, right?
Go right ahead.
As you know, I don't speak in a linear fashion. The whole idea was getting ads, trying to be less commercial as possible with Joe Crawford and Joe Walker, my idea. We didn't think it would fly, but we were shocked that all the people who put ads in the annual, they didn't hesitate. So I would like to make that clear.
Okay, good. I appreciate that. So here in the editing phase is Buford.
Yes,
As Mr. Crawford, who does not like being photographed. So this is a rare image of him. And Ray Francis.
Right. This was done at Tony Barbosa's studio, our first annual, because Tony had the space. I think it was on West 16th Street, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
And all the other annuals were edited at my loft. Not all of them, but I think the second, third was edited at my loft and then my house out here in Brooklyn. This is a photograph of the editor, Joe Walker. This was taken at my one-man show at the Wilma Jennings Gallery in 2002. Joe passed in 2005. And that was the last time I saw him was at the opening.
Well, he played an important role because he secured Toni Morrison, correct?
Yes.
And Clayton Riley for the introduction duties and the forward duties, respectively, right?
James Baldwin, Gordon
And
Parks.
James Baldwin and John A. Williams.
Right.
Okay. So you mentioned Black Creation, some of the photographs that were in that holding pattern before 1973's publication. Black Creation was a touchstone at that time because while the Black arts movement was focused on the arts as well as letters, most people were focused and were not focused on photography because it's, again, 1970. Still, there are people who are not considering the photograph as a form of art beyond a cohort of people within the culture industry and in the arts. So they had a regular place for photographs within this journal, as well as an annual contest. And this is the ad for the Black Photographers Annual as it appeared on the back of Black Creation. And the audacity, again, of the enterprise is in this headline, the most beautiful Black book ever put together. And that was not hyperbole. It really was not. And I've used the word elegant. Other people have used the word elegant in describing the impact of this book that was at human scale. It was
That
really
was Joe
meant.
Crawford's idea of the phrase, the most beautiful Black book ever put together. That was Joe Crawford's idea.
And for those of you who can see it, look at the price of the book. The softbound copy was $5.95. The hardbound copy was $10.95. So, this is you as an institution builder and being part of a community. 4 annuals came out, not every year, but they went to 4. For what reason? Why were there only 4?
Well, I hate to keep backtracking on things, Bill, but I want to get back to the ad.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, Light Impressions distributed the Black Photographers Annual. And Joe Crawford came up with the idea after we found out how it was done. He said, Buford, let's do this ourselves. And I think we were paying a Light Impressions 60-40. Don't quote me on that. Because
okay,
they were the distributors.
Hold on, I'm sorry. You want to let everybody know what Light Impressions was, please?
That's what I was getting to. Light Impressions was the distributor of photographic books. I'm quite sure other books also, but they were the premier distributors of books. So that was Joe Crawford's idea to say, well, let's eliminate them and we can do it ourselves. So that's what we did. We started mailing out the Black Photographers Annual and taking it around to different bookstores like Marlboro, Laurel Bookstore, and a couple of I can't recall now. I just wanted to clarify that so you don't get lost before the program is over.
Okay, so it ends in 1980 with Volume 4, and you said on earlier occasions at the museum that it was primarily due to the quality dropping and your commitment to not having it be a vanity publication that was filled with the same names and images, and that's a lot of integrity on your part, and that's what makes you you. But this photograph is part of your archive, and it represents an image that is to correct a myth about the outcome of the annuals.
Well, Bill, let me go back. I digress. I'm accused of not being a linear person, but I have to go back to this. The annuals. The reason why that we didn't do the 5th volume was because I told Joe Crawford after the 2nd volume that the images quality images are becoming very slim in the sense that we couldn't constantly publish photographs by Tony Barbosa, Ming Smith, Sean Walker, et cetera, et cetera. So I saw then that the quality was going down because there weren't that many Black photographers photographing quality work as we felt. So that's the reason why we didn't do Volume 5. That was the reason.
So again, you wanted this photograph in the presentation so you could correct a.
Yes, there's been in the media and other photographers mentioning that there was a fire and the Black Photographers Annuals were destroyed. So I want to correct that right now. There was never a fire concerning the Black Photographers Annual in the storage places. What I will say is that the annuals in the beginning were stored in Joe Crawford's house, apartment on Hicks Street in Brooklyn. And he was being overwhelmed. You could barely get into Joe's house because he had those volumes all over. So then we took them to the Gold storage house here in Brooklyn. I think they're still there. So Well, after a while, Joe purchased a house in Willingboro, New Jersey. So we moved the annuals to his house in Willingboro, New Jersey. After a while, there was a leak in Joe's garage, and a lot of them became flooded. So Joe said, Buford, can I move the volumes to your basement? And so I said, yeah, of course. But before we moved the volumes to Joe's basement, Joe passed away. And that was in 1985, Joe passed. So that's me holding one of the annuals. And the photograph is by a dear friend and an excellent photographer, Gerald Cyrus. Gerald Cyrus helped me and my son and Joe Crawford's son, Kai, to move the volumes. So now some of the volumes and memorabilia are in my basement. So that's the story.
Okay.
Oh, one more thing I would make to correct on that photograph. Gerald took a much better photograph as far as print quality, but I had to hustle it out to get to a local lab so the photograph could be in this presentation.
Okay. So you called yourself an invisible man. That's your
I
modality.
did say that?
I said, yes, you did.
Oh, okay. I must have had the tape recorder running when I said that.
In terms of what you do in the world, you say you try to be invisible. And so,
Thank you.
Yeah, one of the things that characterizes your work is this irony. And you've said on other occasions with me that you, aside from being a frustrated art director, also a comic. So you've cited this photograph as an example of that. You want to talk about this one?
Yes, what's on the screen keeps throwing me off. The host would like you to unmute. I am unmute. Oh wait, no, it is. Oh, wait. Okay, so that's one of my favorite photographs. I think this really brings to the point of what I try to do in my photograph, as you mentioned earlier, irony. Now here's two white women and a black man. They're sunbathing. Well, I shouldn't all of them are sunbathing in Central Park. But the two white women, they're just lying there, soaking up the sun. Here's the black guy. He's dark complexion. He has a cap over his face, but he doesn't mind his hand being, facing the sun. But he's also protecting his sneakers. So that's all.
Again, it's aside from you being an institution builder, again, I think your irony and your wit in photography is unique and signature. This is the photograph that's on the front of Photographic Images, and there's a story behind this one. Why don't you tell us?
Yes, again, this is one of my favorite photographs. I guess I'm gonna end up saying all of my favorite photographs. But this was taken on 125th Street in 70 or 79? No, 70 or 71, something like that. And I saw this guy standing there with a bouquet of flowers. He didn't have a wrapper around it or anything. He was just standing there waiting for his lady. So I said, okay, let me see who he's waiting for. So I waited for maybe about 5 or 10 minutes, and a cab drove up, and a big smile came on his face, and he walked towards the cab. And I started to stay to see who got out of the cab, but I said, Buford, you got the shot, leave it alone. So I walked off. That's how I got that photograph. And I showed it to my friend, John Dahl, who also printed the little book, Photographic Images. I showed him. Could you go back, Bill? These are going pretty fast.
We're coming close to the time we're going to have to start wrapping.
Oh, okay. Let me zip through this then. I showed the
Just keep
photograph
talking.
to,
Just keep
I
talking.
showed the photograph to John Dahl. And I said, I would like to know who this guy is so I could give him a print. And I would like to see if I could, put it, sell it to the Museum of Modern Art, put it for their collection. But I said, I don't want to be sued. So John said, oh, don't worry about that. I know the guy. His name is Jimmy. And I could introduce you to him. So that's what John Dahl did. He introduced me to Jimmy on the corner of 125th and Lenox. He would stand out in front of the Hotel Teresa with his vegetable stand. So I told him about the photograph. He said, no, you don't have to. I told him I would give him half of the money if MoMA bought it, which MoMA did purchase the photograph. But he said, no, I'm just honored for a picture of me to be in the Museum of Modern Art. So every time I walked by his fruit stand, he would give me a fruit. He said, pick out what you want. I started feeling guilty, like, hey, I'm stopping by his stand and get a couple of apples and oranges or whatever. So, okay, I'll leave that alone. We'll move on then.
So you have spent time in the company of other creative people, like musicians. Is there anything special about photographing creative people like this?
Well, I don't know. Well, the only musician I really spent some time with was Jackie McLean. I went up to his house in Connecticut, and he opened his whole house to me, his wonderful wife, Dolly, and Renee, and the whole family. And Jackie, I was intimidated by Jackie, but he introduced me for like 2 days as a famous photographer and all of that. As I said, I was intimidated by Jackie in the sense that he was so humane. He was a famous jazz musician, one of the pioneers, and he just was a regular guy. In fact, once a session where he was talking about Charlie Parker, and he mentioned what a great job I was doing in photographing musicians without being performers. I just photographed them in their houses, and like Jackie, as I said, I spent 2 days with his family. And he was beginning to tear up, saying that, you know what, Buford, nobody has a photograph of me in Bird. And I never forgot that. So that really took me on the path of trying to photograph as many jazz musicians as I possibly could. In fact, I got a grant, the New York Foundation for the Art grant, to photograph jazz musicians.
Well, there's another thread that runs through your work, along with irony and observing those things that are just quirky and represent the complexity and the contradictions of human life. And that is the motif of the flag in your work, as well as your time with children.
And can I say something about the kid back there with his hand behind his head?
Yeah, I'll go back to that one.
Okay, thank you. Now, this is one of my favorite photographs. But what happens, that was taken in the 70s, but now what's going on with, blacks being shot by policemen, et cetera, a lot of people are saying, you know what, Buford, this photograph is so timely. The kid got his hands up like, please don't shoot. But, that was 30 or 40 years ago. And another thing about this photograph, I could have had it published in a couple of places, but people didn't like the bar sign. They didn't like the bar thing. They said, no, that's too ghetto with the ghetto. So that was that.
So tell me something, Buford. Photographing children then and photographing children now, is there a difference? What do you see between the way children move in the world between then and now?
It's a big difference, Bill. Then I could photograph kids face on, they could look at me and I could photograph it. But now it's tricky to photograph kids because of the internet, child pornography. I don't photograph kids like I used to. I point my camera at my grandkids, and that's about it now.
Is there anything you see in the world, in the way children move in the world, that's different from when you first started?
I think kids then, they had a certain innocence about them. If they saw a camera, someone would say, "Mister, take my picture," or something like that. But now when kids see you with your camera, they kind of shy away from it because, as I said, so much pornographic stuff goes on with kids, and their parents are very attuned to that. So it's difficult.
So you have throughout your contact sheets over so many years, the flag cropping up. And talk about what that means to you in terms of a subject matter, a symbol as content in your work.
It's been in my work from the beginning when I really started seriously photographing is because it shows the jingoism of America, and this is American as apple pie. Mm-hmm. But the flag has a different meaning to different people. The flag for white people means one thing, and the black folks I know, it means another thing. But then again, there's one person that I know, my son's friend's father, well, I should say the family, they hang their flag out on Flag Day. So I asked him, why do you hang your flag out? And he said, you know what, Buford? My ancestors helped build this country, so I'm entitled to hang this flag out. It may mean different things to them, but this means this to me as an American. My parents, grandparents. Oh, this is one of my favorite photographs. That one is the flag. This one, I know I jumped off, Bill.
Oh, it's fine. It's doing fine.
Here you have this interracial couple here, and they seem to be middle-class folks. The guy has on a college jacket, I assume, a symbol of a college. Here's this white woman sitting in the middle, holding a flag with her eyes closed. And on the right-hand side, here's this black man with a wine bottle in his hand. So all this so much is going on here. This is one of my favorite photographs as far as the flag goes and the photograph, period.
And then you have written on the bench between the interracial couple and the white woman, bananas.
You said it, I didn't.
So
I'm glad you included this photograph.
You want to talk about that one?
Yes, this was taken a day for the Native Americans, and so many cars they came with that particular flag, and I had never seen Indian warrior on a horse before. So that was their point of the American flag.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't count the stripes, the stars rather. See, now here's a mother, a mother standing there shooting the flag on Flag Day. No, that could have been a parade there, the Desert Storm Day. So she has a right to have the American flag.
So this is the last one. You want to talk about this photograph?
Yes, this was taken at the Desert Storm Day. So I would assume that somebody in this little girl's family was in the war, was possibly killed or hurt in some way for her to be crying like that, or someone that her family knew.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well,
that's one of my favorite photographs.
It's speaking volume. It really is. Very, very powerful. And
before we really close this up, I don't know how many. I moved my watch.
We're not closed. This is just the end of the flag series. We're going to go to MLK next.
Okay.
The Black Photographers Annual 2 featured portfolios, and one of the portfolios was from Buford Smith that he called The Fire Next Time. And it was a series of photographs that he made starting on the evening of the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and some days afterwards. So this is the spread. This is the rhythm of the images. This is the last spread. And I'm so glad that we had the previous presentation, for those people who have not ever worked with film, those of us who use 35 millimeter cameras, there's a joy that comes when we expose strips of film to photographic paper and we see these contact sheets that not only let us know whether or not we got a good exposure, whether or not we got what we wanted, but it takes us on a journey backwards where we've been. And the photographs here from this contact sheet is from the photographs that we see in the spread. So I want to give Buford an opportunity, and we're going to, this particular frame has significance, and he will talk about that. But I want to have some discrete time with each image. So Buford, why don't you talk about this first one, please?
This photograph was taken on 125th Street in front of Freedom National Bank. I cropped it so it would give the impression, what I felt, that, it's not about freedom. If someone would assassinate a very humble person who believed in peaceful demonstration, nonviolent, Martin Luther King Jr., that it's not about freedom. And this photograph was taken across the street from the Hotel Teresa. This man had his, as you see, his hand on his elbow. And that's how I felt about the whole thing. I was very upset about the people killing, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
What was it for you? I remember it was the evening. It was the evening of April 4th, 1968. Did you go immediately out?
No, I think I went out, I won't say immediate, depends on what you call it, immediate. I'm trying to remember back to that date. But maybe I did, because I took some photographs that night, or maybe the next night, I'm not sure. So I don't want to start embellishing the story on that.
So you said there was a demonstration, a gathering in Times Square, and
well, this was taken in Central Park.
Central Park, and so this
Yes.
woman was one of the people there.
And I wanted to include a white person in this.
So you had some interesting things to say about this photograph.
Well, you had interesting things to say. I just first saw it as that the person who did that, all persons, they were just angry that, Martin Luther King, he was a reverend, believed in God, non-violent method, peaceful, pacifist. And they just said, the heck with that. And they threw bricks or whatever it was into the church window. But as you observed, Bill, that they didn't hit the Christ. So I don't know about that. That's, I guess, Martin Luther King was smiling and saying, yes, I guess I was right. Now, this, I just wanted to show the cops, protecting property again. One had his gun out there. And this was taken at the night after whatever. This man was crying, not because of, well, in a sense, the death of Martin Luther King, but he was really crying because there were some people that was trying to beat up a white person who was a delivery man. And they had swarmed him and was punching him. And he was crying out that Martin Luther King wouldn't want this. Please stop, stop. That's why he was crying. And fortunately, some people got the white man, into the back of a pickup truck, and he was driven off. And this was taken at Times Square. People were, marching and demonstrating, and this cop came up and grabbed him by the back of the shirt jacket collar. And this was taken, I think, in front of Mr. Michel's bookstore on 125th and Lenox. And it said, "Keep the faith, baby." And the next photograph was, this was taken on East Houston Street, if I'm not mistaken. And I title of the whole thing is The Fire Next Time. That was nice about keep the faith, baby. But, it's the fire next time. And that's sort of what's happening now with the cops killing black folks and stuff, that it is going on, damaging of property or whatever. For various reasons, I should say now.
So I want you to talk about the connection between this photograph, and this photograph.
Well, the connection is the first one of Angela Davis, a black woman who's fighting for empowerment of not only for black people, but for all people. And if you notice, the crowd is an interracial crowd back then. So now we come to Floyd, that the crowd here is interracial, but here's a black man that was murdered by the cops. And again, here we go. This was just a sad story of Breonna being murdered. And this is still going on, the case. So there's a lineage between Angela Davis all the way up to justice for Breonna.
Well, Buford.
I hope you could have used that other photograph.
We're not done yet. There's one photograph left. And I'm going to let you talk about that photograph.
This was called What's My Name? This was taken about three years ago in Commodore Park here in Brooklyn. There was, every year they have a punk rock, Afro punk rally going there. And so I just photographed this person with this t-shirt on. And I didn't want to include his face for various reasons, but that's also part of my style, is just show a little bit and let you fill in the rest. So here's the lineage of her going back up to now, what's going on.
But I also see it as a metaphor for you as someone who sees with your heart as well as your head. And, again, I want to thank you for being witness to the times that you shared with us. And I can't imagine some of the things that we would be forgetting if not for the images that you not only created on your own, but to inspire the cohort of the Kamoinge workshop to commit to a bold and audacious enterprise as those 4 publications.
Well, they have inspired me also.
Oh. So with that, I want to thank you.
And thank you, Bill, and thank everyone involved who made this possible. But I hope the next time I'm interviewed by someone of your stature that I'm asked about my technique. No one ever asked me about my technique. How do I use, what do I do? They never asked about that. So I want to put that out there.
Next time.
Well, I would say we have plenty of time. Buford, if you'd like
my
to
picture's still not up. My picture's still not up. I arranged my background and everything. And thank you, Izzy, for your patience. Okay, what's going on now?
Buford, we've got plenty of time for questions.
Oh, you do? I didn't know that.
Yeah, you guys did great on time. So if you want to talk a little bit about technique, let's talk a little bit about technique.
Before we do that, is it possible for you to put a photograph up? Because I arranged my background and everything.
Okay, all right. We'll go. Which photograph do you want?
No, I don't mean the photograph. I mean the image of my house, the bookshelf and everything.
Oh no. Well, we don't have to.
No, let her answer that, Bill, please.
Okay, Buford, if there's it's just a question of your camera, and if Either you have to press start video, or you need
Start video?
Yep, start video.
Where would that be located?
It would be on the bottom left corner.
Well, don't forget, this is the laptop.
You're on the laptop? Okay, it should be there. You had a camera on your laptop in the practice sessions.
Yes.
It should just be a start video button.
Boy, no, I guess I'm gonna have to.
I improved for the audience to know you did beautifully in a lot of practice sessions. So.
Oh, thank you.
So Buford, talk
Oh,
about
wait,
the technique.
it says stop video. I
Hmm.
don't want to stop it. Oh, give me 1 minute here, less than a minute, because it's important. Oh, start camera. Okay, here we go. Background and filters. We don't need filters. Okay, I'm gonna leave this alone. I just won't have a background. I spent so much time on that.
I know you had a beautiful background. I can give testimony to that.
Thank you. Wait, boy, the main, I shouldn't have pressed that. Okay, I'm gonna leave it alone. Excuse me. Okay, what was, as far as my technique, I would maybe if there's any call-ins, they would ask me about things.
Well, I'm going to ask you.
Okay, go ahead, Bill.
So, on our practice run, I asked you about this. I wanted to know about your view and your thinking about printing. I know we're in the digital age and many people are looking at photographs on screens, but to see your work is a different experience, not unlike a De Carava. And so in terms of, as I said in our conversation the other day, there are people in the world who look for things, and there are people who look at things in the world. And so in terms of your approach relative to either looking at the world or looking for something in the world, let's talk about this series. What were you looking for and what were you looking at?
Well, let me, maybe I'm throwing this whole thing off. When I said mention
go ahead
technique,
and throw it off.
Yeah, I want to go back to my photographic method. First
Okay.
of all, I use a 35mm camera, basically a 50mm lens, and sometimes it zooms to maybe a 28 or less, not zoom to, but less 28. And I consider myself sort of like a Dracula type photographer in the sense that I do not basically photograph in bright sunlight. Because one thing I learned from Ouija, when I'm a self-taught photographer, I read in a photography magazine where he said, when you photograph in daylight, set your camera to a 1/25th of a second at f8.
Yeah.
So that's what I did. I would go out and photograph, set my camera at 1/25th of a second at f8. Then I started noticing there were things in the background that were included into my image that I did not want. So I started messing around with the lens opening. So to this day, 20 or 30 or 40 years, 50 years later, I basically set my camera at 2/50th of a second or 60th of a second or whatever. But basically my lens openings is usually 5/6 to f4. I rarely, if ever, photograph at f16 and forget about f22. So that's part of my camera technique. Now, my printing technique is that for whatever reason, I think I was influenced by the prints of Rembrandt. I print dark, but all of my images cannot be printed dark. And basically, 99% of my photographs, I use a number 2 paper. That was printed on a number 2 also. I've learned how to dodge and manipulate, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the paper I use. 99% is number 2. And let's see, And my, let's see, printers that impressed me has been Ray Gibson. Ray Gibson and I were very close. I assume we are still close. I haven't seen him in quite some time. I would look at his prints. They were very dark, but they would seem very luscious if they were, water was spilling over them. So I said, Ray, how do you make prints like this? And he said something. I said, Ray, can I watch you print one day? He lived on the Lower East Side also. So I went to his house. He had a sink, and that's how he made his print. I watched Ray. He did not do anything special. I watched him carefully. He didn't do no mojo or nothing. He just made some prints, and I said, Ray, I can't believe this. And they were just lush, beautiful prints. And I have several prints by Ray Gibson.
How big is your collection? How big is your collection?
I have over 350 photographs that I have collected since I became a member of Kamoinge and as a photography instructor. So I'm leaving all that to my family. That's part of my estate.
Okay.
In fact, Keith D. Ellis, who represents some of my vintage photographs, he said, Buford, I want to see your archives. He wanted to buy some. I said, no, this belongs to the Buford Smith Césaire Agency. That's part of my legacy I'm going to leave to my family.
Mm-hmm. So Sarah, are there questions in the queue at all?
I was reading in the question and I missed, Buford, did you say what kind of camera you use and the specific kind of film?
Oh, yes. Yeah, I mentioned 35 millimeter. I don't want to plug, I have to plug the camera now. But I first started out using a Konica camera. Then I went to a Praktica. Then I went to a Canon, which I use to this day. And when I lived on the Lower East Side, a guy who really liked me, come to find out he was like a drug dealer, he would bring cameras by, and he just gave them because he liked me. I guess I have that kind of personality. I try to approach people that everybody's my friend. You know, I don't get into that distant thing. Everybody is my friend. So this guy took a liking to me. So he brought some cameras by, and I picked out a Leica one day. And so I started using a Leica. It was a Leica that you pull out the lens, etc. But then he came by another time with some more cameras. And I said, you know what? I'll pass on this because I'm saying, Buford, this guy is a junkie. He's breaking into somebody's house, stealing these cameras, and he's giving them to you. So I stopped this guy from giving me cameras, coming to my house with cameras. So then I went to a Canon. I don't know how I came about the Canon cameras, but I started using Canon cameras. Matter of fact, I did an ad for Canon. And my partner at the time, she wrote a letter to Canon and saying, oh, that was a great ad by Buford Smith. You know, it inspired me to buy a camera. And so she already had a Canon camera, but she said, oh, this is the camera I bought, and I would like to get another camera, Canon, based on the photographs of Buford Smith. So that was that.
Buford, we have a good a question about Kamoinge, more about Kamoinge's process, if you will. Did you have group conversations about composition specifically?
Yes, I became a member of Kamoinge in 1965 when I was 5 years old. And I was introduced to Kamoinge by Roy D. Carrara, who's my dear friend and mentor. When I brought my portfolio there, I think it was Ernie Dunkley, I had some photographs of jazz musicians. And he said, he took the photograph and slung them across the table. He said, these photographs don't tell me nothing about jazz musicians. So I was really heartbroken because I didn't think I was that good, but nobody ever criticized my photograph, critiqued my photographs, I should say. So I came back, I don't know, a month later, 2 months later, whatever it was. And I showed my photographs to the members. So then I was accepted as a member of Kamoinge. And the thing about that is, I know I'm jumping here with this Kamoinge thing, is that when I was accepted in Kamoinge, that was one of the days that Roy D. Carrara resigned. So I won't go into detail. I'll just get back to what you originally asked about, Sarah. We would show photographs and each member would look at them and say, well, you know, this photograph is off, it could have been tilted. So the critiquing was very helpful. And I think it went up to the time when I took a hiatus from Kamoinge back in what, 97 or something like that. But it was always a healthy critique, constructive criticism. No one was trying to embarrass anyone, anything like that. So it's been very helpful to me as a person that I'm not above somebody looking at my photographs and say I like it or I don't like it, because it boils down to a matter of opinion.
Right. And we actually found the meeting minutes from, I believe it was June of 1965 when you joined.
Oh boy, see, I wasn't lying.
You were not. You described it that way, and it is evident in the meeting minutes. So
Okay.
there you go. That's the beauty of the archive.
And there's also tapes, as you know, that when I became the president of Kamoinge, I was taping all the meetings. And Sean Walker, I think he was taping some meetings, well, I'm not sure. But from, let's see, from, I don't know, for about 3 years, I was taping Kamoinge meetings. So which you have seen the tapes. And Alpha Nor was cataloging the tapes because Al was, you know, he was paralyzed from the waist down, and he was one of the founders, and he felt bad that he wasn't really participating in any meetings. So what I did, I said, okay, Al, I'll send you the tapes. And so he started cataloging them. And my wife and I, Evelyn, we used to visit Al at least 3 times a year over New Jersey. So he was always kept in the loop.
And actually, Mia Fanar wrote in to ask you, do you still spend time in the darkroom?
Oh, of course. Thank you, Mia. In fact, I'm working on, in conversation with Wilma Jennings, the director of Wilma Jennings Gallery now, concerning the retrospective next year. So I got to hit the darkroom pretty soon. I haven't been in the darkroom for about a year now because I have so much stuff printed up and other things, but anyway.
So somebody else would like to know a little bit more about your Roy DiCarava story, about how you met Roy DiCarava. I'm assuming that she knows you have got a really good story about how you met Roy DiCarava.
I got to find that photograph that I took of Roy. Oh, I met Roy in 1965. I think it was March or April at the Paul Robeson final concert at Carnegie Hall. And a friend of mine, Roscoe Smith, was no relations. He was one of the security guards of Paul Robeson. So I asked him, I said, Roscoe, do you know Roy DiCarava? Because I would like to meet him because I know he's the photographer for Freedom Waves magazine who sponsored the concert of Paul Robeson. So Roscoe told me that he did not know Roy DiCarava. So when I got to Carnegie Hall, I was looking for a photographer who looked who looked professional. So I saw this guy with 2 cameras, one with the 2 1/4 with a flash, and the other one was a 35 millimeter. So I said, well, this must be Roy DiCarava, because all the other photographers I saw, they didn't look professional to me. So I walked up to him. I was maybe like 3 feet from him. I said, excuse me, are you Roy DiCarava? And he turned and said, yes. And I was so nervous that my flash went off. And it went in Roy's face, and Roy went back up, jumped back like that. And I got to find that photograph. So that's my story of Roy. And he asked me if I was a photographer, and I told him yes. I was really a printer. I had printed up business cards and stuff. So I gave him my business card. So he said, come by my loft one day and you know, show me your photographs. So maybe like a week later, whenever it was, I stopped by Roy's loft and I showed him some photographs, and he was impressed. He said, well, you know what? I'm going to introduce you to some other Black photographers who are part of a group called Kamoinge. So I said, oh yeah, great. So the day I was supposed to go, well, not supposed, the day I went to Kamoinge, going to the meeting, In front of me was a photographer. Well, I didn't know he was a photographer then. Yeah, right. He had on a fancy Chesterfield coat with a fur collar, and he had this big portfolio. So I said, okay, he must be going to the Kamoinge Gallery. This was on 7th Avenue, somewhere around there. So I walked behind this person, and it turned out to be Lou Draper. He was the Roy was the director there. So that's how I met Lou, is really following him to the meeting. Is there anything I left out for this person?
I don't think so. I think that you told a good version. That was
Because
great.
I don't want to start fibbing on that.
No, I wouldn't know if you were fibbing.
Well, I've
Well,
told you the story several times.
Well, I certainly hope you find that photograph where you flashed Roy Dekarava.
I gave him a copy, though.
Okay, all right.
So the other thing, Buford, I don't know if you know how the chat section works at the bottom, but people have been typing comments in, and I just want you to know that you have a huge fan club that has been typing in all kinds of positive, encouraging notes about the importance of your work and how much they love your work. So we are going to copy and paste those out, and we're going to email those to you. Or you can just, if you can see it, you just click on the chat box and you will see
So in other words, well, you said positive email. So obviously my check cleared to all these people.
Your check cleared with this audience tonight. They are huge fans of your work.
Great.
But there are a couple more. We have a little bit of time. You guys did so well in your time. There are such great questions. So let's see. One question is about 125th Street. Was 125th Street one of your favorite places to take photographs?
Oh, yes, because for me, which it still is, 125th Street is Harlem. So it's changed a quite deal, but it's still the pulse. Because about 5 years ago, my son Cesar and I, we got off at 125th Street and Lexington, walked all the way down to 125th Street and Broadway. I needed him because times has changed. My son is 6'2", and you know how tall I am. I'm like 6'1", so I needed a guy like him because the scene had changed. To quote album by Bud Powell. Yeah. So I was, I couldn't pick up my camera and photograph like I used to. I said, if some guys come out, I got this 6'2" guy. They're going to kind of possibly think twice. And with Cesar, I've taken quite a few, I like photographs, but because of him that I wouldn't have been able to take if he had been with me. I said, there's one guy I have a photograph is that this young man has on a $350 shirt with his pants hanging off his behind. And across the street is a Muslim brother with the what's the name? Final Call newspaper. And if Cesar hadn't been with me, I would not have risked trying to take that photograph. Because if this guy went to shorts down with his buddy, if they'd have, that would have been that. And there's another photograph I took with Cesar, he was with me, that this guy was walking down the street with his hairstyle up like a pole, I can't describe it properly, with a leather jacket on, one of my favorite photographs. It's published in one of the magazines here. That if Cesar hadn't been with me, I would not have risked taking a chance of taking that photograph. So 125th Street is my beat, which I have to get back there before this, even before the virus is over.
Okay.
But I photograph all over Harlem, but that I always begin there and I end there. I do walk around, but that's the post for me.
Yeah, and you have. Sometime we should put together a series of just from doing studio visits with you, just 125th Street series, because it's
sounds good to me. Well, I could do a whole segment with this retrospective exhibit that's coming up that I'm talking to Kareem Jennings about. I could just do one wall or more on 125th Street.
You could. It would be an incredible wall. which actually brings up another question. Lola Flash asked about that commented that the last show that you curated at Ken Kalaba Gallery was seminal. Do you plan to do more curating?
No, that was it for me. In fact, Corinne asked me to do that. Other than that, I would have never attacked it. And thank you, Lola. I got a personal email to send you later on.
You have a lot of personal emails. I'm not saying
Yes.
all the names. Karen Bell also said, I believe, that she has a snap of your Woidi Carava photo of you flashing. So those are more emails for you to follow up on.
Oh, she does? I can't believe that.
I
You
don't
went
know.
into my file cabinet, Karen?
I'm just reading what I'm seeing.
Karen is my breakfast partner.
Okay, that's good. I want to. What else? That back issue of the journal, the number 4. What are? How many are still available, and can people buy the original copies?
Yes, there are a few available.
I'm loving the chat box, Buford.
That's something that I'm not at liberty to really discuss now because it gets into a whole lot of things. But we do have some volume 4s.
So,
and one thing that we missed with the volume 4, before we got to that, was very important that we choose a female editor. Because I told Joe, it's about time we got a female editor. And I had chosen Jeannie Matusameh Ash, but Joe ended up using Lenore Jenkins. I don't know how that came about, but you have to ask Jeannie Ash, but I recommended her. So maybe Jeannie was probably busy or something.
Really?
And another thing about the annual I would like to mention.
Okay.
2 people who were not included into the annual, and I really feel guilty about it. The only ones that weren't in the annual list, they did not submit. My dear friend, Kareem Simpson submitted, I think, at the last minute, and we had already chosen for photographs. So that has bothered me for all these years, Kareem. And the other person was Leroy Lewis of Washington, D.C. He submitted photographs after we had gone through so many photographs of cultural events with Black people playing drums and so forth and so on. So that's why we didn't include his photograph. So those are the only 2 people that we didn't really include.
Buford, there's a question
that has bothered me over these years.
Well, it's glad you're setting the record straight tonight. We are recording, so we've got it.
Oh, good.
And also, a question came up about the Studio Museum in Harlem, where Kamoinge had really their largest show in 1972. And the question, and so I'm partly answering the question because the question was there a show at Studio Museum?
But there's still no image of me? That background, God.
And but the other question was kind of did Ed Spriggs play a role, because since he was the director at the Studio Museum in the 1970s with photography, and I know that you and Lou were very important to a whole second collective around the Studio Museum in the 1970s. Do you want to talk for a minute about that?
Well, that exhibit with the group.
2 separate things. The exhibit I know was one thing, the Kamoinge exhibit in 1972 at the Studio Museum, but then the question was kind of what role did Ed Spriggs play? And you and Lou were part of a whole photography group that Ed Spriggs asked you to start, right?
Yes, I'm glad you mentioned that because I was thinking about that today, but I couldn't remember the name of the group. But with the Kamoinge exhibit, Ed Spriggs gave us open, no problem. There was always been a problem with Ed Spriggs, so people said, but he just let Kamoinge do what they wanted to do. We just hung it like we wanted to hang it. And there was a group that how I met Joe Crawford, students photography group. I can't think of the name of it, but the person
I think it was just called Sandra, can you we have it, it's in the Draper archive, because I was confused for a while as to whether it was just more of Kamoinge before we realized that it was a separate group, and I think it was just some.
Oh, you talking about Kamoinge? Or?
No, this was like called the Black Collective Photography. Like,
Yeah, I think that was it. That was it. You know who named it? The jazz musician, a trumpet player. He was a protege of Dizzy Gillespie. I can't think of his name. I can see him now. He named the group. In fact, Ralph Gibson brought him into for the meeting, and Lou Draper was taking notes. God, I can see the guy now. This is terrible.
But the larger point, I think, is that even beyond Kamoinge and the Black Photographers Annual, you guys were doing a lot for photography, and that the Studio Museum was certainly playing a role, but you guys were, you were just doing a lot for photography all over the place in New York in the 1970s.
Well, we had a gallery called the Kamoinge Gallery on 138th Street.
Right.
And we had two exhibits there. I was in one, and I think after that it was closed because of some nudes that Sean Walker had taken, and they wanted us to take the photographs down, and we refused. So they said, it was a very bourgeois neighborhood, and we don't want to see any nude pictures of women's vaginas or whatever. So that was that. Boy, it's too bad that somebody's not around to explain that. Oh, by the way, welcome home, Sean. But Sean wouldn't know all this information.
All right, let's see. I'm looking at some of your, there are two different questions, and we should probably wind up pretty soon. Let's see. Oh, Shreya reminded us that the name of the group at the Studio Museum was the Collective Black Photographers. That was the group.
That's it.
Outside Kamoinge.
Jimmy Owens, he named it. Jimmy Owens. Thank you.
Jimmy Owens named the
Jimmy Owens. He came with that idea because he was part of the Musicians Collective.
Got it.
Jimmy Owens.
And that's a good a moment to say that next week, Shreya Cochran, who was the research assistant, so vital with clearly a photographic memory for details, will be presenting next week at the beginning, and then we will have Erina Dugan and Adra Cowens as the second session on next week. But are there any last things, Buford, that you want to tell this incredibly supportive audience who's just pouring in? They're just sending all kinds of positive comments. Lola Flash said, "We're all standing on your shoulders, Buford." No,
I don't know about that. I was going to say that I appreciate everybody's support. And Roy DeCarava signed a poster that he gave me about, 10 years ago, if that long, where it said, "To my dear friend Buford Smith, bearer of the torch." And I hope I'm still the bearer of the torch. And I want to pass it on to somebody, because it's getting heavy. And that's for all the young Turks, Turkettes, male, female, or whatever that's out there photographing. And I don't want to come up with the cliche that everybody says, is be true to yourself, but go to exhibits, not only photography exhibits, go to just regular art exhibits. Get out of a box. Too much airtime is going on.
No, well, Buford, I think you brought us back to Bill, because Bill, I thought you began beautifully, because in a way, Buford, you started passing on the torch with the Black Photographers Annual, because you inspired so many photographers from the next generation, and you're continuing to inspire them. But I would say that the privilege for me of working on this project has been meeting so many photographers who have told me that the Black Photographers Annual was either why they were a photographer, or it was inspirational, it was hugely influential. I think there's just been an overwhelming response, and that has been an incredible legacy that you created then and that you are continuing to pass on.
I hope
Well,
so.
you know, it's really interesting how our paths continue to cross. I've met Buford Smith on the occasion of the 90th birthday for Gordon Parks, and it was the photograph that was made to 90 Black photographers came together to in the same spot that A Great Day in Harlem photograph was made by Art Kane with the major jazz musicians and composers and singers. And in the center of the photograph was Mr. Parks. Next to him, to his right, was his daughter, Toni Parks. Next to Toni was Buford, and next to Buford was me. And the next time we met was at the Schomburg on the occasion of the publication of Timeless, the anthology of photographs from the Kamoinge members. And I surprised him by recalling and making the connection between the Black Photographers Annual and Black Creation. And it was that evening he had charged me with writing the history of the Black Photographers Annual. But little did he know that that was on my bucket list before we met. It was important to me at some point in my development to understand that it was just as important for me to be someone who chronicled what we did and how we thought through the written word. And because of the impact of the enterprise that the Black Photographers Annual incorporated, I definitely wanted to be the person who framed the significance of the annual, not only in my life, but in the life of so many other people who don't even know they were influenced by me. As well as to make sure that it was a chapter in the discussion of post-war American photography that has been in many, many, many ways, before that publication, quite aggressive in rendering the work and the ideas and the thoughts of these people invisible in the historical record. And I want to thank Buford. I want to thank Sean. I want to thank the work that was done by Rena Dugan with her book. And of course,
Oh, now I'm on screen.
and of course, Sarah Eckhart for giving me the word count to frame it the way I felt it needed to be framed, and inspiring me to get it in on time. So.
Well, it was our honor to have you write, and I can't say enough what a privilege this project has been, both to work with the artists and the scholarly community. It has been incredible. And Buford, a lot of people want you to call them, so I'll let you know. Marilyn,
I'm finally up on screen now.
We're not seeing you, but that's
You
okay.
not?
No.
I'm seeing myself. How do I correct that before we go off?
Izzy, I don't know if you have any ideas. We could have an after party. Last week we accidentally had an after party, so maybe we should have an after party where we can get your screen on view, and then anybody who wants to stick around can see it.
Well, what I'll do is I won't touch the screen because I'm on screen now.
Okay, that sounds like a good plan. Everyone, thank you so much. Buford, Bill, Courtney, Sandra, this was a wonderful night. Just to close us out, we have 2 more weeks of our virtual symposium. It's hard to believe, as Sarah mentioned, we'll be back again next week at 5 p.m.
Do not miss Shariah Cochran. She was an anchor in this enterprise. And I remember when we had our first planning meeting, and the model was in the room. We were talking about different things, and every time there was a question that or a fact that was hanging in the air, Shariah brought it to earth.
Yep. She's amazing.
She is. She is. Much love to you, Shariah.
All right, see everyone next week.